Well, we're going down to the final three teams of our 2025-26 OHL season preview series. And today we're going to talk about one team that has gone through a lot of change, and that is the Brampton Steelheads. Last year was supposed to be their year as they had a full lineup. They big trade, bringing in Carson Rakoff. They had one of the top goaltenders in the league in Jack Ivankovic, but injuries really derailed their season. Let's take a look at how things have been over the last 3 years for the Steelheads leading up to the 24-25 campaign. When you go back to the 2022-23 season, they finished with a record of 31-31-6. They finished with 68 points, and that year traded away the likes of Del Bell Blues and Del Mastro, and they were looking to the future, and they acquired Angus McDonnell and Porter Martone at the trade deadline in 2023. It was a sign that this team was looking to the future, and in that season, knocked out in the first round by the North Bay Battalion in 6. But there was some glimmers of hope for the Steelheads at the time when they were in Mississauga. And then in 23-24, they surprised many. They were seen as a team ahead of expectations. They finished with a record of 38-22-8, 84 points, and despite the strong regular season numbers, knocked out in the first round by the Sudbury Wolves in 5. But it was okay. Everyone was figuring the Steelheads team, as they were preparing to move to Brampton, they were ready to be the top team in the Eastern Conference, and many had expected them to go to the OHL final last year with the likes of Martone, McDonnell, picking up Carson Rakoff. You've got Jack Ivankovic in net, and you knew that they had the draft capital to acquire more pieces, which they did during the year. The problem being was the injuries. Angus McDonnell missed a good portion of the season, and it seemed as though at times the team was having a hard time getting things going in the same direction. But they still finished with a record of 36-22-10, one of the stronger teams in the second half last season. They finished with 82 points. Now, what's fascinating when you look at the season stats for the last 3 years, they haven't suffered a shootout loss, which I think is pretty incredible in itself. But it was another first round exit, this time at the hands of the Oshawa Generals in 6. And after the playoffs, that's when we started hearing about the rumors of players leaving for the NCAA, and that would all come to fruition. And now this team is looking very different from a season ago. Their stats last year, though, were phenomenal. Their goals for per game, 4.38. Their goals against per game, 3.52. And then their specialty teams, that was a questionable area for this team. 13th overall in the power play at 21%, but their penalty kill, 76.6% at 15th overall in the OHL. And their top 5 scorers, Porter Martone had an excellent season, 37 goals, 61 assists for 98 points. Carson Rakoff was second in scoring for Brampton last season, 42 goals, 44 assists for 86 points. Luke Misa, third with 34 goals, 51 assists for 85 points. And then Finn Harding, he was fourth, 7 goals, 50 assists for 57 points. And then Angus McDonnell, despite missing a large portion of the regular season, still fifth in scoring, 27 goals, 27 assists for 54 points. But all 5 of those players will not be returning for 25-26, which is really hard when you want to do that junior hockey cycle where you might look to trade off some veterans to recoup assets for the future. So this team is kind of in a tough spot going into this regular season. Then in the goaltending department, Jack Ivankovic, 25-12-5 is his record for .903 save percentage. And then Braden Gillespie, who they picked up the OHL trade deadline from Guelph, finished with a record of 17-17-2 for an .881 save percentage. And then with the goaltending, just like the top 5 scorers, these two are not returning next year. Ivankovic, NCAA, and Gillespie also moving on. So it's a whole new look with this Brampton squad, which is going to be hard, and they've made some big trades during the offseason. They did add David Green from the Sarnia Sting, who they signed his player commitment after the trade. They also acquired veteran goaltender Zach Bowen from the Peterborough Petes and Justin Bottineau from the Guelph Storm. Although at the time of recording, when I looked at the rosters, he had an X next to his name, as if maybe he's been released by the team. I haven't had confirmation at this time yet, but you pick up Bottineau, and is he going to be a part of this team going to 25-26? Still not confirmed on that front, but it's the players they've also traded away. So yes, they acquired David Green, who I think is going to be great on the back end, but they traded away Jack Van Volsen in return to the Sarnia Sting. In the Zach Bowen trade with the Peterborough Petes, they gave up Lucas Carmiris, who is solid up the middle, and he's going to be a key contributor for the Petes this upcoming season. And then the NCAA exits. Luke Misa leaves for Penn State. Jack Ivankovic leaves for Michigan. Porter Martone leaving for Michigan State. And then that doesn't even include the players graduating to the American Hockey League and whatnot. So this is going to be a very different team in Brampton. So James Richmond, who is the last standing GM slash coach in the Ontario Hockey League, he's got his work cut out for him, although he has done several signings, like the 2 first-round picks they had. They signed Peter Green, who was selected 14th overall, and Keaton Arda, who was selected 15th. Now, they had 2 first-round picks because they traded the playing rights of Adam Van Tilly to the Kitchener Rangers. So in hindsight, that move's kind of helping Brampton here, because with Green and Arda, these are 2 players that you could build around over the next couple of seasons as long as they stay in the Ontario Hockey League. And I think that's going to be the big asterisk with players now that are drafted high in the OHL selection. How long do they stay in the Ontario Hockey League before they think about maybe going NCAA? They've also signed second-round selection Lucas Johnson, 5th-round pick Zach Nyman, 10th-round goaltender Peter Chlebowski. He's been, from all indications, what I've been told, has looked pretty solid in net for training camp so far. So he'll be a name, I think, for the future to look towards. And then they've also got a commitment from import Matej Stankoven, who will be coming over. And from what I've seen, he could be a pretty exciting player for the Steelheads. So it's not doom and gloom per se for the Brampton Steelheads. It's just this team has expedited the rebuild with the amount of players exiting this team. So it's not going to be a quick turnaround for the Brampton Steelheads. And then when you look at the draft cupboard, it's a little thin. For 2026, they do have London and Owen Sound second-round picks, so that's a plus for this team. But then they don't pick again until the 5th round, where they have 2 selections, and then Guelph's 7th. So 2026 cupboard, a little light. 2027, they have 2 picks in the 3rd round, Guelph's 4th, and then a 6th. And then 2028, they have a 2nd, a 5th, a 7th, and 8th. So they don't have a ton of picks, but this is where if, say, Porter Martone was coming back, or Luke Misa, Ivan Kovic, you could then trade those players to contenders at, say, the trade deadline and recoup a lot of those picks and then build around Green and Arda for a run potentially next season. But it's with all the exits, it's going to be a little more challenging here for James Richmond, although he is one of the more, I think, underrated general managers in the Ontario Hockey League. Because he's with the Steelheads, I feel as though fans around the Ontario Hockey League kind of discredit when with the Steelheads when they were in Mississauga and Brampton, which I think is too bad, because I did go to a game in Brampton this past season and I was amazed by the fan support there. And I hope they can continue that at the CAA Center when this team finds itself towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings, because it's going to take dedication. The diehard fans are going to keep coming out, and that's what they're going to need if this team is going to survive in Peel region. But my prediction right now, I'm figuring Brampton's going to be at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings, somewhere between 7th and 10th. And when we look at the channel vote, there is some optimism. 8% say Brampton can finish in the top 3. 29% say they'll finish somewhere between 4th and 6th. And then the majority, 63%, are anticipating Brampton to fall to the bottom of the standings. So let me know in the comment section down below what your thoughts are on the Brampton Steelheads. Do you feel like it's doom and gloom for this team, or are you encouraged by the young talent that's been drafted? And do you see this team maybe turning it around in a couple years' time? Love the interaction. Thank you very much for all your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Talk to you again soon.